Now, I'm really excited to introduce our speakers. Laura Burke is the Vice President of Human Resources for Barilla America. I'm guessing that's pasta, but if it's not and I'm mispronouncing it, apologies. Horrible American Midwestern Lake effect, terrible accent. Apologies, y'all. So Laura has been there for 15 years and is responsible for all of the talent management and people processes supporting the Americas business, which includes Canada, US, and Mexico, as well as Brazil. Now, Laura is a board member for the company and has the pleasure to serve almost 1,000 employees across the Americas. Laura is going to be joined in conversation with Patricia Mota. Apologies again if it's supposed to be more of a Hispanic inflection. You're not missing out on mine. It's awful. Patricia is leading strategy at the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, where she is president and CEO. Now she leads strategy, fundraising and development, leadership programs, and expanding impact on a national scale. Now, Patricia is an advocate for access and equity and strives to create a multi-generational, diverse, and inclusive support network to catapult the career growth of Latinos living across the country. Now, Patricia earned a double Bachelor's of Arts degree from Indiana University Bloomington. Hi, Hoosier, I was there too, in Spanish and communication, as well as a master's in public affairs and public management from Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Indianapolis. Patricia is also a certified leadership coach, insights discovery licensed practitioner, and a proud leadership Greater Chicago fellow. So welcome, Patricia. They are going to be paired with our amazing own assistant project manager, Leandro Antoniuk, who is part of Powerfly. Now, Leandro has worked as a DEI strategist throughout Latin America and implemented diversity and culture strategies in more than 80 global organizations. Leandro is a proud activist for human rights and LGBTQIA+ visibility. And in addition to founding the Storytellers Group, Leandro is an energetic and dedicated member of the marketing team here at Powerfly. Y'all are in for a treat. I'm really excited. So I'll sit back. Leandro, take it away.
Thanks, Meg. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Leandro, and as Meg was saying, everything is about respect. So if you have comments, questions, please drop it in the chat box. I'm really honored and happy to be here to be talking about the Latinx topic. I think it's really interesting. It's something to deep dive in it. So why don't we start and you tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you get to know each other, how you get to interact on, I think you pronounce HACE or HACE in Spanish. So please, if you can tell us a little bit more, that would be great.
Wonderful. Thank you for the kind introduction. So great to be here with good friend Laura, and great to meet you, Leandro. Wonderful, wonderful. I am Latina, Mexican American. I am a first-generation college graduate and professional, born in the United States. I'm the proud daughter of immigrants from Mexico, and I go by Patricia or Patricia, so either is fine. And I get to carry my own personal mission through the work at ACE, which is empowering individuals to achieve their highest potential. But what I'm most proud of, and that Meg mentioned, is creating that multi-generational support network, diverse network across the country. And while ACE is a national organization, within the last 2 years, we've got a lot more participation and engagement internationally on a global scale. And so we're seeing that transition and borders really crossing with now this remote environment, and considering that we work with a lot of global companies. And so some of the data and information that I'll share today is from more of a US Hispanic perspective. And Leandro, please add in giving your global perspective in terms of the Latino experience, because it's different, right? And it's so unique as well.
Thank you. Thanks for all of your sharing and your knowledge already. You can go next then.
Sure.
Laura.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leandro and Meg, for the kind introduction. And Patricia and I are longtime friends, both Chicago natives, but I also am from the Midwest. So I don't have a Hispanic accent, but I'm an ally to my Latina friends. I'm a sister from another mother and father. So Patricia and I are friends, and obviously an ally to the LGBTQ community as well, Leandro. So we're all amongst friends here today, but I'm just super delighted to be here. Yes, we are the world's largest pasta manufacture, and we love to provide great, healthy food for all. My condolences and just my thoughts and everything go out to the people of Ukraine and everyone that are surrounded by the conflict today. So I just wanted to acknowledge those folks. We're lucky that we get to talk about leadership development and something about growing in our environment, but I know that others around the world are facing much other challenging situations. So anyway, I'm just delighted to be here today, and we're longtime partners with HACE. So I'm excited to dig in a little bit about how we've partnered with them. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, it's amazing to have the opportunity to learn, to know, to uplift each other, to grow our knowledge around diversity. So I think it's really interesting. So why don't we go straight into the topic, the Latinx topic, with the first question that we have that it's really interesting just to kick us off, that it reads, what are the unique educational and career gaps that Hispanic Latinx professional identities often experience for those who wonder and don't know? What can you share with us?
Yeah, and I'll start off by speaking to HACE's mission is the mission being to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the pipeline of Latinx talent, providing Latinos the insight, access, and development to be successful in their careers. And so we work with partners such as with Barilla, and we carry out our mission through 3 core pillars. One is the talent acquisition piece, so programs, services, referrals, where we're actively connecting our employer partners to anywhere from intern, entry-level talent to referrals, even more on the senior level talent as well. And us has always been broad in terms of business functions, and so you see that represented across our reach. The second area being around pipeline and leadership development programs. So these are cohort model trainings that start as young as the high school level to mid-level to professionals through individual coaching, leadership assessments, culturally relevant content. And so we work with partners such as Barilla to either their employees are participating, and now alumni of these programs are coming back as subject matter experts, as guest speakers. Laura has been a guest during these programs to help individuals get promoted, be successful in their careers. And then the third area is around thought leadership and branding. So this is a diversity roundtable. This is our executive leadership tour, our ERG, BRG symposium. So business resource groups, employee resource groups. So opportunities that we can showcase our partners, individuals like Laura that are aligned with our mission and really doing some great work. And so before I share why we exist and some of the challenges, I love, Laura to share a little bit more in terms of what we've done in our partnership.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Patricia. I mean, I think we have sponsored events, hosted events, attended events, sent participants to events. But I think, Leandro, to your question about one of the biggest gaps that HACE also kind of helps us solve a problem that exists in our business, it's not so much an education or career gap, although Patricia talked about that kind of first generation, second generation. There's 2 things that really stood out to me. 1, the networking piece, and 2, the confidence. And what we found is that when you provide the door open for them to do the networking, they just run through that door as fast as they can, and they have the skills to do it. So it's not a skills gap. It's just opening doors. So in my role, what I really try to do is make sure that we are addressing systemic things, process things, and company processes to make sure that those doors are wide open. And if they're not open, we got to get them open. And then on the confidence side, what I found is that when the leaders went through these programs, they came out with what they already had going in, but with the confidence that they could make the ask on compensation, make the ask on the career assignment, take a different decision if they needed to on their career steps. So it was really just flourishing and fine-tuning what they were already bringing to the table. And that's what I love about us, is they make it really super easy for our employees.
I love when you are saying like, we gotta have those doors open, like we have to do it, creates opportunity, keep advancing Latinx professionals. I think it's really interesting, and all the involvement that you have on it, like goes all over the place, like from training, everything, upscaling. So I think it's really interesting to know that. From your perspective, what is the role of community and community building plays around addressing all of these challenges that Latinx professionals faced?
Yeah.
I'll jump in first, Patricia. I think for us, we would be nothing without our community. I mean, we make products and people could buy our products, but for me, it's so much richer than just the transactional piece of what we do in business. It is the community. Our workplace is a community. Our NGOs are community. Patricia is community and family. And that's why we do so much around hosting and bringing the community in. And I've really missed that the last 2 years, to be honest with you. Even with now what's going on around the world, you can see the power of community. And I think that when we see it working well, we're like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Why don't we do that all the time? And I think that is a good lesson for us to learn today, is there's so much power in community. And I'll give a specific example, especially for companies that are on today listening that may not be big, may not have big funding, may not think that they can do something because they just don't have the resources. Partners like us, they figure out a way to take small companies, put them together in a community. And we did this in particular with our multicultural leadership development program. It was a pilot program, but the only way it would have worked for us is with a community and with other friends of HACE coming together to band together for a greater good of the whole, which is really advancing the Latinx community and their leadership. And it can work. So community is a beautiful thing. We've seen it in action really, really work.
Yeah, and I love that, Laura, because we always say at HACE, we are a Latinx serving organization, but not Latinx exclusive, right? We welcome everyone to be a part of our programs, our events. It's imperative that we're creating awareness across the board. And if 2 years ago, I was stunned by a statistic by the Center of Talent Innovation that surveyed about 2,000 Latinx professionals, where 76% mentioned they repressed some part of their persona, whether it's how they pronounce their name, whether they're talking about their culture, their background, or talking about their identity. And when you're able to bring those individuals to a community, that safe space, where then they're going back into their workspaces and getting comfortable in terms of, we had one participant said for the first time, I asked them to call me Letty, not Letty, right? Or I, for the first time, no one knew I was a Puerto Rican, and I'm going back to my company and talking about that and how critical, because I didn't look necessarily what the stereotype of a Latino is, right? And so folks going through our programs are doing that, but most importantly, doing that across all community groups, right? Where it's really creating that safe space and that network for folks where they feel that they belong, but most importantly are empowered to reach their high potential.
Absolutely, and having the opportunity to share our storytelling, who we are, when we talk about being Latino or Latina, and it's really interesting at first when you were saying your name, because sometimes I don't know if I have to say Leandro or Leandro, or to adapt. So I think all of these challenges are the things that we can uplift each other and talk when we are building community and sharing different knowledge around our professional backgrounds and everything. So I think communities and building community is really powerful. And everything is changing. You also mentioned innovation. And when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, those are not just words. We're talking about the companies of the future, working cultures, thinking forward that teenagers today are going to be joining our companies in 5 years. So how we keep advancing our companies and everything around diversity and Latinx at the same time, like knowing that being Latin or Latino or Latina, it's just something else to empower on our identity. So I think it's really interesting. Thanks for sharing all of that. Another question here: what are the tools that must be leveraged to enable professionals with Latin American roots to establish generational wealth? Talking about generational wealth, I think it's really interesting and looking into the future too.
Patricia, let me talk about the business side if I can, and then come around, because I think this is where our paths come together. There's two things that come to mind. One, International Women's Week is this week. So hello to all the Latinas and congratulations. And I see you. I acknowledge you as part of International Women's Day this week. But what's interesting is that if you think about your own wealth, what are we doing to educate women, and what are we doing to educate Latina women on their wealth in the workplace? So some people might say, oh, we're making pasta, that's not my job. And at the same time, if I can just fine tune the dial a little bit for our women leaders and for our Hispanic or Black communities in terms of financial wealth, it goes back to some of that systemic stuff that we want to address. and fix, not just give them a job, but help them think about their job in another way. Because I have, back to the community, what we find is that we need to start earlier. We have a program with the Crystal Ray University, which is a high school. You think about that. I have high schoolers out there right now working while they're going to school full time. These kids know how to do it, but they may not have the exact role model blueprint at home to create the financial wealth. And all they need is for someone to invest in them, to show them how to do that. So I think there's two things: start earlier and make sure that you're doing very targeted wealth management things for the folks so that they can find their blueprint, so that they can make that next generational step. And even as an employer, you can find little ways to make those opportunities available.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Each of our programs has a financial literacy component, everywhere from the students to the professionals, providing that space and time for the professionals to think through it for themselves, where they are. But making sure that it's also culturally relevant. Like what does this mean? Like, we know, what are Latino families, with Latinas being around 70%, making the key decisions when it comes to financial decisions and products at home, healthcare, not only taking care of children, but also aging parents, right? So how are we ensuring that we're educating our families, and especially Latinas being key decision makers as part of that process? And so it's embedded throughout our programs, especially our Mujeres de HACE, which is our women's leadership program. There's an assessment done to understand where each of the participants are in terms of their own financial wealth building process when it comes to anywhere from budgeting all the way to investments, and understanding what that means for them. But even I'm proud to say the additional thing that I'm doing with two co-founders, one of them being our current board chair and an investment fiduciary, is launching SheNext, which is a fintech specifically for Latinas, a culturally relevant tool that's helping them with advisors and culturally relevant support throughout, to help them, again, from everything from budgeting all the way to investments, and throughout their own financial decisions that are being made. And so for businesses, it's imperative that we're creating, as employers, the safe space to have those conversations, right? Right now, there's a lot of volatility in the market. I made sure we had our retirement advisors talking to the team this week to say, this is what you want to consider, right? Before you're thinking about pulling, but having those safe spaces and creating those opportunities for your employees to ask questions.
Nothing to add. I mean, everything that you're saying, it's talking about cultural change, social movement advancing, creating connections and opportunities. I think it's really a pleasure to hear you both and learn from you and your experience and everything that you have to offer to us today. So thanks for your answers. The next question, it's about working culture and how can we be better and do better when we talk about working culture. It reads, large organizations often have their own DEI departments, but what are the key ways that HR interface with DEI? We often see like HR really attached to DEI, but DEI is larger than just HR. What can you mention about that?
We don't have a DEI separate department. So HR is kind of the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. So one, it is embedded. All of the employees in HR have a specific D&I goal. So number one, I think, again, it goes back to making sure that it's embedded in all of your processes throughout talent attraction. Patricia talked about that, but also performance and goal setting. So all of the HR employees actually have a specific goal, number one. Number two, it kind of goes back to the networking piece that we talked earlier. I'm not Hispanic. I'm not a Latina. I don't know what it's like to be a Latina. I don't know what it's like to be Black at work. So I have to ask. I have to have a strong enough network. They have to trust me. I have to ask them, and I have to listen. So after I ask and they tell me that I'm really listening to try to meet their needs. And I think that, Leandro, connected to the business. There has to be a business imperative. So if we don't care about Hispanics as consumers, we'll never get it right in our company. If we don't care about them as customers, or if they're buying and if the buyer at Walmart is Hispanic and we don't understand that, then we may miss the opportunity with customers, for example. So we really need to think about it. One, it's good for business. Two, it's just being a good person. And 3, we want to like raise up the next generation in our companies or even with our kids just to be better people. So I think there's lots of value all around.
Absolutely. And it all comes around being a responsible company and the impact that we have, and looking into the future and not forgetting that we are a company and we have business to do just to keep developing. So I think it's really interesting. Laura, you wanted to say something? Patricia, sorry.
I think Patricia, yeah, I mean, she might speak to the consumer side a lot more than I can. I mean, the buying power, Patricia, of the Latinx community is
well, I
huge.
mean, Laura, and that's why you all are one of our favorite partners, right? Because you talk about it, how it's intertwined, right, across with HR and DEI versus it's not the case necessarily with a lot of, right, Leandro, you mentioned it's sometimes separate. And so it's when it should be better aligned, right? And so we do advise with our partners as best as possible. We can all come together and make sure that we're aligning there with the goals piece. Especially when it comes to the hiring and then the talent management, the professional development is ensuring, you know, we work a lot with BRGs, ERG groups, and many times one of their they're tasked with helping with diversity hiring, right? And if if DEI and HR is not working in sync with them in terms of providing them metrics, in terms of providing them the transparency they need so that they can be supportive, we're starting to see that a little bit more as a practice. The second thing that I wonder will be a trend or that we've seen like with a company such as JP Morgan, right? They've first ever head of global Hispanic initiatives. And a particular, so this is some, you know, a new department. I haven't seen any other company do that, but they're particular focus on this market and intertwined with HR and DEI. So they're coming together. And so it'd be interesting to see that. And again, going back to the comment on what's in, you know, what are folks, companies or employers doing to innovate? And then the professional development piece, right? I think it's imperative that not only are we working with DEI to nominate who these participants, you have to work closely with HR, right, and their supervisors to understand, you know, the candidates that can benefit from these programs, but also then continue to have that career pathway within their own respective organization as well.
Absolutely, and everything is connected to visibility, representation, getting to know each other. It's really interesting. I was thinking too that something that we have been seeing and that it's really a trend that is changing a lot, which is just to focus on the main areas per se. Like we can do trainings with communications, marketing, their agencies to talk about communication, HR, compliance, like giving strategic training that I think it's really empowering and really interesting too. I was just thinking about that when you were sharing all this. And have you seen change? This is a quick question that I was just thinking. Have you seen change over time since you started working around these topics from the last couple of years? Have you seen changing around advancing the Latinx Hispanic community?
I would say I've seen progress. When you look at the data, the recent data, however, it's when you look at senior executive level roles across corporate America, it's been hovering around 3 to 4%, and that hasn't changed within a decade. But within the last year, I've seen a lot more placements, a lot more boards. So I'm hopeful that by next year or so, we'll see a shift in that percentage. And then for Latinas, so women specifically, it's less than 1% at those senior level roles. If you're looking at the population in the US, nearly 2 in every 10 individuals are of Hispanic Latino descent, right? And when you start looking at representation around these organizations, we still have a lot of work that needs to be done, which is why mission of HACE, critical partners like working with Laura and Barilla are critical so that we can continue to move the needle and to push, but accelerate that, right? I think that's the need that is critical now.
I think Patricia's right. It's way too slow.
Yeah,
I mean, it's way too slow. And I think what I've seen, the biggest change that I've seen over the last year, Leandro, is that companies were kind of doing it from the top down. I think, honestly, COVID, George Floyd murder, Asian hate, all the racial injustice, I think now we're starting to see this kind of sandwich, pressure isn't the right word, but sandwich acceleration that employees are saying, they're all reassessing, what kind of company am I working for? What kind of company do I want to work for? And I think that they are deciding, is this company are they moving in the right direction? Are they making progress? Slow, fine, but are they making enough progress that I feel like this aligns with my personal values?
And
so
it's not just, I'm sorry. And it's not just the percentage of the population, it's the economic, we are the economy. And when I say we, it's the people, right? And if you look at this segment of the population in the US, is looking at 1.7 trillion purchasing power, 2.7 trillion GDP, meaning that if this population were its own country, it'd be the 7th largest country, right? And so it's an economic imperative at the end of the day, and that the incoming generation sees themselves represented as well. So
absolutely, representation matters so much. And Patricia talked about it. You measure, you manage what you measure. And even if you set small targets, just 10% increase, and be transparent in those targets, because then employees can see that acceleration and that real commitment to progress.
Absolutely. And if we want to keep being pioneers into the future as companies, we need to be having all these important conversations and having access to all of this knowledge and wisdom that you're sharing with us. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your answers. We have a couple of minutes left. If you want to share with us, where can we connect with you? How can we get in touch? Where can we find you? And any last message to share with us, that would be great.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Patricia. I don't say it enough, unless we're in moments like this where I get the opportunity just to say thank you to her, for her and her team. She has an amazing team behind her. If you aren't connected with us, please do so. Even if there's one little nugget, I promise will be worth it. So thank you, Patricia, for your leadership. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for pushing us and companies and pushing me personally. I'm better because of knowing you, and I'm a better leader as a result of that. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to connect with me. I'd love to help if anybody has questions about what we've done. And my only challenge to the audience is to be committed. This is not a 1 year kind of in and out. This isn't a quick fix. Patricia and I have known each other, gosh, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years. It's been a very long time. And we didn't get there overnight. We've made a lot of mistakes, and with their grace, they've really helped us pick up and make progress. And I look around and I can see the representation in the progress. And I feel it as a leader. I actually feel the progress. So thank you, Patricia.
Oh, thank you, Laura. You're over here thank you. And I want to say you're an example of a true partner, in the sense that if we wanted to shift, if we wanted to pivot, if we wanted to try something new, we wanted to innovate, you were always open to that. And I think that's a lesson for all of us in this DEI space, is that willingness to be able to pivot, to try. And then if you don't know, to ask, right? And ask those questions. And so thank you, Laura, for joining us in this conversation. Leandro, for moderating our conversation. It's so great to meet you. And I am accessible on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to share my email address as well and connect with anyone.